Hello, welcome back to Inner Warrior, a mental health podcast. Whatever battle brought you here today, I'm glad you're here. If you joined me for episode 1, thank you for coming back. And if this is your first episode, you're right where you need to be. Last time we talked about what it means to be a mental health warrior. Today, I'd like to answer a different question. How do you become one? Or maybe the better question is this. How do you realize you've been building one all along? Because I think a lot of people hear the word warrior and immediately pictures someone fearless, someone confident, who never struggles, but that's not the person I'm talking about. I'm talking about the person who gets out of bed on a difficult morning, the person who goes to therapy even when they don't feel like it, who has another panic attack and still chooses to try it again tomorrow. Those moments may not look extraordinary to the world, but they're extraordinary to the person living them. And that's where an inner warrior is built. Not in one life-changing moment, but in hundreds and hundreds of quiet choices that nobody else ever sees. Let's talk about those choices. When I first started thinking about the phrase inner warrior, I honestly believed it described someone stronger than me, someone who had everything together, someone who wasn't afraid, someone who always knew exactly what to do. I honestly couldn't have been more wrong. Over time, I kind of realized being an inner warrior has very little to do with being fearless. It has everything to do with what you choose to do while you're afraid. The honest truth is, courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is deciding that fear doesn't get to make every decision for you. You know, for a long time, I thought strength looked loud. I thought it looked like confidence, like determination, never letting anyone see you struggle. But the truth is, life has taught me something very different. Real strength is often incredibly quiet. It's getting out of bed when your mind tells you not to. It's making the phone call you've been avoiding, walking into therapy, taking a medication without shame. It's asking someone, can we talk? Those moments rarely make the headlines of our lives, but they're often the moments that change them. I just had a situation at my job recently where I had a resident come in and he said to me, can I come in? Can I sit down? Didn't ask me if we can talk, but I knew that he needed to. Just because he came in and said, can I sit down? Now, he's done this to other staff. He's done this quite often, and a lot of times people push him away. But, and honestly, so have I. But something told me that day to not do that. And I said, sure. And he sat down, and I said his name, and he said, what's going on? And he started talking to me and telling me what was going on. That's courage. That's having an inner warrior. That's the moments that can change them. That's what an inner warrior really is. Not someone who never struggles, someone who keeps choosing life, even while they're struggling. I think one of the biggest myths we've been taught is that strength means never falling apart. But if that were true, every one of us would fail. Everyone. Because life has a way of bringing all of us to our knees at one time or another. The question isn't whether you struggle. The question is, what do you do next? Maybe today, your next step is simply getting through the day. Maybe it's making an appointment you've been putting off. Maybe it's telling someone the truth about how you've been feeling. Maybe it's taking one deep breath before you try again. Whatever step that is, don't underestimate it. Small steps have a remarkable way of changing the direction of our lives. They really do. It's amazing how you could just slightly alter the direction that you're going in. And at the same time, you realize that when you come to that crossroad, or you come to that, that path where it deviates to the left or the right, choosing which direction you're going in for your life, it's a small step, but it can have a remarkable way of changing the direction of your life. I used to believe that I had to become a different person before my life could change. I don't believe that anymore. I think healing is much less about becoming someone new and much more about discovering the strength that has been quietly growing inside of you all along. That's the inner warrior, not someone you become someday, someone you're already becoming, one choice at a time. And maybe that's why so many people never recognize their own strength, because they're looking for dramatic moments, while courage is quietly showing up in ordinary ones. One of the biggest misconceptions I had about healing was believing that one day I'd wake up, feel confident, and I'd be ready to face the things that scared me. I kept waiting for that day. It never came. What finally changed my life was realizing confidence wasn't going to arrive first. Action came first. Confidence followed. Not all at once, not after one good day, but slowly, one experience at a time. There were days I still felt panic, but I stayed in the situation just a little longer than I had before. There were days I wanted to cancel plans, but I chose to try anyway. I'll give you an example. I was going to a concert a few months ago, well, a little more than a month ago, actually. And I was in the car, and all of a sudden I started to get very uncomfortable. I drove around, and I kept trying to get this to go away, and it just didn't want to. That panic started to come in. I started to stay with that situation a little longer than I had previously and other times. But you know what? I wanted to cancel those plans to go to that concert. I transferred the tickets, or tried to transfer the tickets, to my wife, who was going with me. And she's like, "What are you doing? I'm not going without you." And at this point, now she's driving. And that is a big thing for me, to allow somebody to drive. It's removing the control. And we'll get to that kind of a situation with control maybe later on in another episode, or even in this episode. But the fact is that she did something that I wasn't expecting, because I wasn't paying attention, and she turned onto a road, and I freaked out. I went into a level 12 panic attack. I had to pull into a park and ride on the side of a expressway, and I had to get out of the car. And then something I did, which was a thought I had, I asked her to give me my phone. I went to my TikTok. I looked at some of the motivational shorts and reels that I have put up there. And just listening to some of those motivational things helped me. It guided me. It made me realize that I had that strength before, and I still have that strength now. So I didn't cancel those plans. I chose to try. There were days I drove home feeling disappointed. A couple of times prior to this incident, I did that because things hadn't gone the way I hoped. And then there were the days that I surprised myself, like the going to the concert. Not because the fear disappeared, because I kept moving anyway. And looking back, those moments didn't seem very significant. In fact, most of them felt ordinary. But ordinary moments have a remarkable way of shaping extraordinary lives. I just couldn't see it at the time. I see it more now with those kind of situations, where I'm able to push through, or, keep going. But back in the day, years ago, I couldn't see it at that time. That's something I wish more people knew. We spend so much time waiting for a breakthrough that we forget breakthroughs are usually built from hundreds of tiny decisions no one else ever notices. And that's what happened with me. I had one conversation, I had one appointment, one deep breath, one extra minute staying in a situation that feels uncomfortable. One more attempt after yesterday didn't go the way you hoped. None of those moments seem life-changing by themselves, but together, they can change everything. That's why I don't believe your inner warrior is built in giant leaps. I think it's built in inches, in choices, in moments when no one is watching, because those are the moments when your character grows. If you're waiting until you feel completely ready, let me gently tell you something. I wish someone had told me years ago, You may never feel completely ready, and that's okay. You don't have to feel fearless to take the next step. You don't even have to feel confident. Sometimes all you need is enough courage to take one more step than you took yesterday. That's enough. And that's it. Because every step, no matter how small, is teaching your mind something incredibly important. I can do hard things. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not comfortably, but I can do them. And that belief is where confidence quietly begins. So, can I ask you something? When was the last time you gave yourself credit? Not for what you accomplished, but for not giving up. Take a second and really think about that. Because I have a feeling you've survived things that nobody knows about. Conversations that took every ounce of courage you had. Days when getting out of bed felt impossible. Moments when your anxiety convinced you to turn around. But you took one more step anyway. You may not think of those moments as victories. I do. I do because I've been there. I think one of the biggest reasons people underestimate themselves is because they're measuring their lives by the wrong things. We celebrate promotions, graduations, new homes, big milestones, and those things deserve to be celebrated, of course. But what about the victories nobody applauds? The panic attack you worked through, the therapy appointment you almost canceled but didn't, the difficult conversations you finally had, and the boundary you finally set. The morning you got out of bed, even though everything inside you wanted to stay there, those victories matter too. Maybe even more than we realize. But somewhere along the way, many of us learned that strength meant never struggling, or crying, asking for help, slowing down. I believed that for a long time. Now, I believe something completely different. I think real strength is honesty. It's saying, today is hard. Today is just not my day. Tomorrow may be better. That's being honest. That's the real strength. It's reaching out before you're drowning. It's allowing yourself to rest without believing you've failed. It's understanding that healing isn't measured by how fast you're moving. It's measured by whether you keep moving at all. Now, here's something I wish someone had taught me years ago. You don't build resilience by never failing. You build resilience every time you get up. That doesn't mean you won't have setbacks, because you will. I still do. I just told you an example before. We all do. But setbacks don't erase growth. They reveal it. They show how much we've grown. Because you can go from point A to point B, but sometimes you may get from point A to point A, point 2, or point 5. Just because you didn't get to B doesn't mean that you're not growing. You're learning. Setbacks don't erase the growth because they teach us that those small little steps we take help us to not quit or to not continue. Because, like I said, every setback gives you another opportunity to choose to quit or to continue. And every time you choose to continue, even in the smallest way, your inner warrior grows a little stronger. Not because life is easier, because you became a little more resilient than you were yesterday. So let me ask you one more question. What if you've been stronger all along than you ever given yourself credit for? What if the person you've been trying so hard to become is already beginning to emerge, one quiet decision at a time? Maybe, just maybe, that's who your inner warrior has been all along. Now, I'm just going to take a moment because there's something I've never shared on this podcast before. People sometimes ask me where the phrase inner warrior came from. Not why I named it inner warrior, but where the phrase itself, inner warrior, came from. It didn't come from a book. It didn't come from a course. It came from a conversation. Years ago, I was hosting a Zoom meeting with members of an online mental health support group that I had created back in 2020. And we were talking about panic attacks, about anxiety, and about the overwhelming feeling that so many of us know so well. And I remember trying to describe what a panic attack feels like. And I said, imagine you're alone in the middle of the ocean. The water stretches in every direction. There's no shoreline, no boat, no one is coming to rescue you. Then suddenly a wave crashes over your head. You can't catch your breath. Your heart is racing. You feel like you're drowning. If you've ever had a panic attack, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It feels like you're fighting for air, like you're disappearing beneath the surface. But then I asked everyone something. What happens next? Because even in those moments, something inside you keeps fighting. Something inside you refuses to give up. Something inside of you says, take one more breath. Stay with me. Keep going. I told them that is your inner warrior. It's not outside of you. It's already within you. It's the part of you that keeps reaching toward the surface, even when your mind is telling you you're sinking. Then I shared another picture with them. Imagine a buoy floating in the middle of the ocean. A storm rolls in, the waves get bigger, the wind gets stronger. One wave crashes over into that buoy and forces it under the water. For a moment, it disappears, right? But what happens next? It comes right back up. Not because the storm stopped, and not because the waves became smaller, because that's what it is built to do. I think we're a lot more like that buoy than we realize. Life is going to hit us, sometimes gently, sometimes with incredible force. There will be moments that knock us down, moments that leave us wondering if we'll ever get back up. But there's something inside of us that keeps rising again and again and again. That is your inner warrior. Not because it prevents the storm, because it helps you rise through it. That's what I've believed ever since that conversation. And that's what I hope you'll begin believing too. Not because I said it, because one day you'll look back on your life and realize you've been rising all along. So before we finish today, I want to ask you one final question. When you look at your life, what do you focus on most? The moment you fell or the moment you get back up? Because I have a feeling if we sat down together over a cup of coffee and you told me your story, you'd probably tell me about the mistakes, the regrets, the things you wish had gone differently. The moment you believe you failed. That's what so many of us do. We become experts at remembering the storms and beginners at recognizing the strength it took to survive them. What if we looked at our stories differently? What if instead of asking, why does this happen to me? We also asked, what has this journey taught me about myself? Not because every storm has a reason, not because suffering is somehow good, but because even in the middle of the hardest chapters of our lives, we're still becoming someone. I know there are people listening today who don't feel strong. Maybe you're exhausted. Maybe you're overwhelmed. Maybe you're wondering if you have anything left to give. If that's you, I want you to borrow something from me for just a little while. Borrow my belief. Because until you can see your own strength, I'll believe in it for you. Not because I know how your story ends, but because I've seen what people are capable of when they refuse to let the storm have the final word. Your inner warrior isn't measured by how loud you are, or how confident you feel, or whether you have everything figured out. It reveals every time you choose to keep moving, even when the path is uncertain. It's revealing every time you choose hope over hopelessness, connection over isolation, honesty over pretending, one more step instead of giving up. And that's what I hope you'll remember after today's conversation. Your inner warrior isn't something you're searching for. It isn't hiding from you. It isn't waiting for you to become someone else. It's already there. It has been with you through every storm you've survived, every setback you've endured, every morning you didn't think you could make it through, but somehow you did. Maybe you've been stronger than you've even realized. And maybe that's the beginning of believing in yourself again. So as we come to the end of today's conversation, I hope you'll leave with one thought. Not something you have to memorize, not something you have to achieve, just one thought. You don't have to become someone else to discover your inner warrior. You simply have to recognize the one who's been walking beside you all along, the one who kept getting back up, the one who kept taking another breath, choosing tomorrow, even when today felt incredibly heavy. The warrior has always been there. Life is going to bring storms. Some will pass quickly. Others may stay far longer than we'd ever choose. None of us gets to decide whether storms come. But we do get to decide is this: whether the storm gets to write the ending of our story. I don't believe the strongest people are the ones who never struggle. I believe they're the ones who continue rising even after life has knocked them down again and again and again. Not because they're fearless, not because they're extraordinary, because they're human. If you remember nothing else from today's episode, remember this: your inner warrior is measured by how hard you fight the storm. It's revealed every time you rise after the wave has passed, every breath you take, every step you choose, every moment you refuse to give up on yourself. Those are the moments that build the life you haven't fully seen yet. So wherever you are today, whether that water feels calm or whether you're in the middle of the biggest storm you've ever faced, I want you to remember the image we talked about today, the buoy. The waves may knock it beneath the surface again and again and again, but that's never the end of the story. It rises every single time. Not because the storm became weaker, because that's what it was built to do. I believe this. I believe it's the same is true for you. Maybe today you don't believe that, and that's okay. It really is. Borrow my belief until you find your own way, because I've seen what happens when people stop measuring themselves by the storms they've endured and begin recognizing the strength that carried them through the storms. That's where healing begins. That's where hope begins. And maybe, just maybe, that's where your inner warrior has been waiting for you all along. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Thank you for trusting me with part of your journey. It's an honor I'll never forget or I'll never take for granted. Until next time, be patient with yourself. Keep taking the next step. And whenever life convinces you that you're sinking, remember, the storm is never the end of your story. Your inner warrior will help you rise. I'll see you in the next episode.